All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. There might be more people that log in as we go, but welcome to Lung Cancer Initiative's Community Education webinar. Today's program is focusing on caregiver support and education around who is a caregiver, what resources are available to caregivers, and hearing from this perspective of a lung cancer survivor and caregiver. My name is Colleen Christensen. I work with the Lung Cancer Initiative as the engagement coordinator there, and we're really excited to be able to share these resources with you today. I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items before we kick off the program with an introduction from Paige Humble, our executive director. So this is going to be a 1-hour event. We're shooting to finish up around 5 p.m. and this is going to be recorded. So we'll be sharing it on the Lung Cancer Initiative YouTube page. So I encourage you, if you hear of a resource here that might be helpful to share with a family member or friend or neighbor, I encourage you to share them, the recording of this program in the next couple of days when we send that out to everyone. And I also encourage you to send your questions in the Q&A box or the chat. We're going to keep an eye on that throughout the program and answer any questions that come in at the end. So I think that's all I have. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Paige to give a brief introduction.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you everyone for joining us. We are very excited to be able to offer this program today because it certainly has been something that folks across our network have been looking for, and we certainly work with a lot of caregivers from across the state. So I think we have a really great presentation for you today. I have lost my slides to share with you. Oh dear. Colleen, do you happen to have these slides up?
I don't, but I can pull them up really quickly.
I am so sorry, everybody.
It's okay. Here, I'll share them for you.
Okay, thank you. I have a few slides and I just want to introduce you to Lung Cancer Initiative. If you're not familiar with our organization and what we do, because we'd love for you to get involved. So next slide, please. Today's program would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors. So I would love to thank Genentech, Bristol Myers Squibb, and Pfizer for making our community education programs possible. Our mission is to advance survivorship and provide support to those affected by lung cancer through research, education, and access programs. And the words advance survivorship really speak to how our programs have evolved as our organization has continued to work with survivors and families across the state. Next slide, please. So we focus in several key areas. First off, we partner with institutions across the state on research funding. We have our Research Fellows program where we work with Duke, UNC, Wake Forest Baptist, ECU, and Levine Cancer Institute to provide fellowships for folks that are early in their career in the hopes that they'll stay in the field and continue to go on and receive larger funding. And we also have a career development grant that is kind of a larger grant for a more mid-career researcher. And again, with the same goal to help them and support their work in the hopes that they'll continue to go on and receive larger national funding. We also have an innovation grant where we are working with organizations outside of academic medical centers to fund innovative approaches to lung cancer research. We have access programs like our gas card program, where we provide $50 gas cards to help patients access appropriate care and treatment. Last year, we provided $250 stipends to 80 patients across the state to help them access basic needs during the pandemic. And the program was so popular and needed that we've decided to offer that program again this year. In addition, we have survivorship programs. We have our luncheon series, which also started during the pandemic. It was a way for survivors to connect. And again, that has been so well received that we are continuing that program into this year. We also have our Survivors Wellness Retreat, which we do each year. Last year was virtual, and we're planning a retreat again this year. And then we also have educational initiatives, events like today, events like our summit and our annual meeting. And on the next slide, I have some dates that I'd love for you to mark on your calendar. So, our annual meeting is coming up next month. It is a great way to hear all of the different programs and events that happened over the past year, and then to really get a sense of what's coming up next year, this year as well. We're also celebrating advocates and survivors and caregivers from across the state at this event, and it is virtual. Our summit's also virtual, and I encourage you to mark your calendar for that. It's May 21st and 22nd. It's a great way to arm yourself with tools to become a more effective advocate in your own community. We also have some other events. You'll see our Survivors Day event coming up. We have a wine walk. We have our Lunge Forward series events. They're all going to be on the same day this year in September. We are planning for in-person events in Charlotte, the Triad, and the Triangle. And we're also inviting people to host their own event in their own community across the state if one of these areas is not close to them. And of course, we're going to have virtual opportunities as well. We also have our Triangle Lung Cancer Golf Classic, which will be at the Washington Duke this year on October the 11th. Our Evening of Hope Gala is going to occur during Lung Cancer Awareness Month in November. We are planning an in-person event at Northridge Country Club this year, but of course are also planning ways to participate virtually in that event as well. And I mentioned our Survivors Luncheon series, but certainly encourage any lung cancer survivors to participate in that. You can reach out to Colleen, Jenny, or myself, and we can certainly get you plugged in and more information about how to be a part of that series. I just want to say thank you for being here today. If there's anything that our team can do to support you, please don't hesitate to reach out after the program. And again, thank you to our speakers. I think you're in for a treat today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Colleen and we'll move on with our program. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Paige. Great introduction for LCI. Well, now, without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Jenny and Johnny Cake. Jenny is a lung cancer survivor, and Johnny, her husband, has been by her side through their entire journey. And so they're going to share their perspective as a survivor and caregiver. So Jenny and Johnny, I'm going to pass it over to you guys. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks. I guess I'll just start out by talking about when I was diagnosed. I am an 8-year lung cancer survivor. Yay. I was diagnosed in 2013 with stage 4 with an EGFR mutation. I was as healthy as anyone could be. I was working full time, probably working too much, but I had a pain in the middle of my back. It wouldn't go away. Now, I was really active. I worked in the yard a lot. I was like, well, maybe I just pulled something. I was going on a trip out of the country for work and thought about 14 hours on an airplane and were like, I can't take this pain in my back that long. So I checked with my regular doctor and they said, come on in here. Let me see what's going on. And so that was 8:30 in the morning. And by 11:30, I found out that more than likely I had lung cancer. She just saw something on an x-ray that did not look good. Immediately got me in for the regular tests, the CT, the MRI, the PET scan, all those good things. And come to find out I had a tumor that had gotten outside my lungs and attached to my T4 on my back. That was a Friday. The following Friday, it decided to snap that T4. It grew just enough to snap it. So I ended up going in the hospital, having surgery to move that and put in a cage and all the good things that go along with holding that in place. I must say that when I originally found out, I was sitting in my office at work. Usually they don't try to tell you those type of things over the phone, but she was in a panic to get me in to be seen. I am the type of person that doesn't worry about something until I have something to worry about. And so I immediately came home and told Johnny. He had just retired that year in May, and this was in October, and I don't want to get upset, but he was the first one I told, of course. And then I called one of my best friends, that she's a little go-getter and a person that will just take charge. And that's what I encourage people to do, is find the people that can really take charge of things and go with you, be with you, because you're still in shock. I mean, you're listening, but you're halfway listening and you don't really retain any information. So she was great, went with us to every visit, sat with Johnny while I was doing my test. She was just there every step of the way. And then I must say too, rely on your family. We're fortunate enough to have our daughter who lives in Durham. She's been there. When I was out of surgery, unfortunately, there was something going on at our house where I could not come back here. It was a mold issue. And so I stayed with her for a week. She took care of me day and night. And I can't thank her enough for that. Gets me emotional, sorry, talking about it and just talking about how great everybody is. And I'll let Johnny talk about from his perspective, how he felt when he heard the news and how he managed it.
Well, when I heard the news, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I'm a warrior. I always have been. I'm sorry, but that's the way I am. There's no words for how I felt. I immediately called my doctor. I needed something to relax me, to help me through this news. She did, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, believe me. Well, anyway, as time went on, I kept saying to myself, and our son and daughter would say, "Dad, you got to be strong. You got to be strong." And I kept saying to myself, "How am I going to be strong?" And then I remembered something that our commanding officer told us when I was in the service. When we had a hard mission to go out on, he always used to tell us two things. It's the first thing, he says, "Ben, you got to promise me nobody's going to go stupid." I said, "Okay, that's fine. We don't intend to." But the second thing that I want you to always remember this the rest of your life. My favorite saying, when the going gets tough, that's when the tough get going. And I kept repeating that in my mind for months. And finally, I said to myself one day, I said, Jenny's been my rock. I need to be her rock now. So I got a so-called hitch up my britches and get on her team, because we're in this together. We are in this together, and we're both going to fight like hell together, and we have. Anyway, I can't say it's gotten a little easier, but it's just not an easy thing. It's still, and there's a place in your mind where it's still logged in there that she has lung cancer. I learned to hate those two words. I hate them. I can't do anything about it except be with her, support her, and we're going to get through this together. There's no question.
And I think too, I try to tell people there's lots of things that you can get at your local hospital or wherever you're being seen. All you got to do is ask for it. I would say also ask for the best of everything. In today's world, unfortunately, with the way healthcare is and things, I was fortunate. I worked at Duke University, had great insurance, was able to, make phone calls and get the people that I wanted. That's not always easy because you're always told, well, they're not seeing new patients, or they're not this or that. And I just say fight. Fight. You're fighting for your life anyway, so you might as well, go in there and get what you want. At the same time, I wasn't, and still probably am not, the type of person that likes to rely on other people. It's just not me. I'm strong. I'm the one that can just take charge, get her done, and do all that. But through this, I've realized that I have to rely on that. I have to rely on my friends, on my family, especially, but then also networks like I have here with you guys and the Lung Cancer Initiative folks. The monthly luncheons that we have online, especially during COVID, have been a godsend. I've connected with people that I didn't think I would ever meet, and they're great. I mean, we laugh and cut up, and it's just really a fun time on those luncheons. The other thing is that I have participated in an online retreat that was sponsored also by the Lung Cancer Initiative, which was great. That was a full week of fun. I've met some wonderful people who I still call and talk to. And sometimes friends and family are great, but sometimes it's just nice to talk to somebody who's going through what you go through. It's difficult, but I don't know, you have a kindredship with them. Another thing that early on in my diagnosis that my daughter was able to do, especially when I got home from the hospital, is she set up online. I mean, the younger people know where to go to get everything, right? But they set up for meals for people to be able to make meals and give to us, which was great. Also a way for us to share health updates, because you get tired of saying the same thing over and over again about how things are. So that was a great resource. But I think overall, it's like Johnny said, we're in it together. And I think positive thinking, I'm one of those people that I wake up every day and just show my gratitude to, I don't know, everybody believes in God, but I think that I am still here, that I am blessed, that I am still kicking and being able to go. So I think a lot of positivity and just showing gratitude in any way that you can is great. And my financial advisor even got involved in all this, because I was asking him, of course, about can I retire early, because I didn't know if I'd be able to go back to work or not. But he talked to me and gave me a book on the subconscious mind. I thought, what good is that? But I read it, and it's amazing. And it is one of those things, you are who you think you are, and you are as well as you think you are. And so I'm one of those that have my little mantra that just tells me that I'm healthy and whole, and I'm going to get through this. And so far, I've been lucky. I'm still on targeted therapy and will be, I guess, forever. I've been fortunate that only in the 8 years, only had to change once to a different drug, because the other one stopped working, because those little cancer cells are smart. But I don't have anything else. I think that's sort of it. It's just relying on all the community and the people around you, and find new people too, that it helps.
Very well done. Yeah, it's, well, as you all know, it's just no fun. It really isn't. I have done some research also insofar as the mental aspect, to be a positive source to Jenny, and also her being, the same way. It's I just hope that this could help some other husband and wife
Just know that everybody
to
handles it
understand.
differently.
Yeah, to understand, it's not over. Okay, you still have a life to live, and you can live a good life. And the one thing that we try to do a lot together, insofar as if I go to a little golf outing or something, I'm going for 2 or 3 days. I mean, I can't wait to get back home. I really can't. I need to be back home. I need to be with my wife. And of course, she's the same way. If she goes to the beach with her girlfriends for 2 or 3 days, it's Johnny, I'm coming home Sunday. I can't wait to get home. So we try to do some visits apart, but we also try to do a lot of things together, so forth and so on.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing. I know it takes a lot of vulnerability and honesty to share things that are so personal and have been such a challenge, but I think it just speaks to the fact that even caregivers need support, and I'm so grateful that you guys have such a great support network for you guys. So thank you for sharing.
I'm smiling because Johnny's phone just went off, and it's our daughter who's watching.
She said, I'm so proud of both of you, and about 50 hearts. she's
Oh, you muted yourself. Well, I'm glad that she was here to see that.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for being here too.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, we're going to shift gears a little bit. And I'd love to introduce Loretta Muss. She is the Family Advisory Council Coordinator at UNC's Cancer Hospital. And Loretta is going to share a little bit from the clinical perspective of resources that caregivers can be looking for at their cancer center. So I'm going to mute myself and share my screen and pass it over to you, Loretta.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, everybody. I think let's do next slide here. And the next one, please. So in order for you to know how we got here, I'm going to give you a little background. I coordinate a patient and family advisory council for the cancer hospital. And this is us. This is the picture. We are probably 50 strong. We are included in our group are about 35 patients and caregivers, and the rest are staff members. We've been in operation now almost 12 years. And since COVID, we have never been busier. There is something to be said for meeting in your own home. So that being said, I guess you could say we're a little rowdy, but we get a lot done. We're very well respected, so much so that we participate on a lot of committees throughout UNC Healthcare. Next slide, please. So I need to update this slide, don't I? So at the present time, our occupants, our presence rather, is very varied. So we do a lot of teaching, and we particularly are very interested in the caregivers, and I will go into that in a little bit. But we're teaching to the medical students, we're teaching to the staff, we're teaching to the fellows what patient and family-centered care is all about. So we're very active in that. We're participating in grant writing, because now you will find that a lot of grants will require the presence of patients or caregivers as part of their grant writing, their grant recipients, and we're becoming more and more active on that. We're patient advocates. We do get out there and we do say, what about the patient? What about the caregiver? Kind of stop people in their tracks, but that's our role to do that. We help with process improvement. How is this that you're anticipating of developing? How is it actually going to improve the patient care, the patient experience, the caregiver experience? We participate in health oversight. We've done some rounding at the bedside. We have even developed a program with the chairman of the Department of Medicine about bringing rounds from outside the patient room to inside the patient room. We've taught them body language, words that work, how they've received news, ways that indeed would make the patient be seen as a person, as opposed to somebody who's clothed in a hospital gown. Next slide, please. So the caregiver program. I have two gentlemen on my council who have been with me since its inception. These guys are absolutely wonderful. And literally together they came up to me and said, hey, Loretta, what are you doing about the caregivers? And I kind of looked at them like they had, 4 heads. And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, we're caregivers. One was for his wife and the other was for his best friend. And I said, talk to me about it. And to this point, I didn't even think about it. It's like having a new baby. I got this covered. Don't worry. Yeah. And then the sleepless nights and the colic and the crying and everything kind of brings it back home. And that's the same thing that happens with a caregiver. So we decided to devise a plan. It had to be something that was sustainable. We didn't want to bring in too many ideas. We put together a focus group, And we wanted to be sure that the most meaningful way that we could reach out to the caregivers would be something that would touch them directly. So next slide, please. First of all, we had to define who a caregiver is. And I'm going to throw out some kind of astonishing statistics. So by definition, a caregiver is an unpaid family member who's part of the team caring for the oncology patient. Almost 3 million Americans are oncology caregivers. Most tend to be women. The average age is 53, and this person probably has a full-time job in addition to a family. 88% of the caregivers are related to the family. The average length of time of being a caregiver is about 2 years, but if you're a caregiver of a patient who's receiving an infusion or chemotherapy, that will be 39 hours a week. In essence, it's a full-time job. Well, when we interviewed people, 43% said they were performing complex surgical and medical procedures at home for which they felt very ill prepared to do. 82% were the primary communicators for the healthcare team. 62% were the advocates for the patient. Only 54% discussed the patient needs with the caregiver, and only 29% discussed their needs with the healthcare team. Next slide, please. So you have a job title as an oncology caregiver. And I bet you didn't even think about this, but you do. You're an advocate. You speak for the patient, because studies show that oncology patients hear 25% of what is presented to them. So the role of the caregiver is to be this person, to advocate. As a protector, they're going to manage meds. They're going to know when to call the healthcare team. They're going to envelop their world around the patient, just like Ginny and Johnny are doing. You're a domestic engineer. You're doing laundry. You're cleaning the house. You're fixing meals. You're a financial counselor. You're addressing all the issues of the healthcare, the household bills, the medications, the cost of care. You're dealing with the insurance companies. You're dealing with the financial office. It's unbelievable. You're a coordinator of the healthcare. You're going to be participating in healthcare discussions. You're going to be providing care, managing healthcare problems at home, making so many decisions, and a lot of times you're going to be flying by the seat of your pants. The caregiver provides tremendous emotional support. They're also the communicator to the family members. And they also do an awful lot of long distance communicating, because you know that our families don't stick around, that most of them travel. We want them to do that. We want them to have roots and wings, but we want them to go to other places. So you have to have a system in place so that one person will be the spokesperson. Who is going to be that, determine it. Also to be able to communicate through Caring Bridge, lots of helping hands. There are lots of resources out there for our caregivers and patients to be able to communicate, but not everybody knows what's available. Next slide, please. So the caregiver burden is huge. And I'm going to give you some more numbers because I've done a little bit of work on this. And it's important for you to know how valuable you are, but it's also important for you to know that you're not alone, that people do study the caregiver and they do study the caregiver burden. So 62% of caregivers surveyed felt an increase in stress and fatigue, with 50% of those being highly stressed. And remember, I said only 29% of caregivers were asked how they feel, even acknowledged. They're responsible for the care of another person with multiple issues, because let's face it, cancer is a disease where the average age of diagnosis is 67. So that being said, as we get older, we've got other things which they call comorbidities. So not only do you have a cancer diagnosis, but you can have osteoporosis, you can have diabetes, you can have heart disease, any number of things. That being said, you can see what I'm talking about. One of the biggest things that I found as a caregiver once for my husband, and I'm sure you have found in multiple situations, is being invisible. And this is where you need to get a little rowdy. This is where you need to sort of stand up. This is where you need to advocate. These are huge issues that impact our caregivers. Many of our caregivers, their role is to monitor the severity of the symptoms. And the top need of our caregivers was managing their own stress. And they're not told how to do this because a lot of times they're not included. So at UNC, when we offer a support program to our patient, we make sure that the caregiver is included. So when we do yoga on the floor, the caregivers are able to do that. If there is a financial toxicity issue, we make sure that the caregiver is included in that. The resource center that we have for our patients and families, we are teaching our staff to say, did you bring someone with you? These are really important questions because Johnny's going home with Ginny and he's got questions and we got to take care of him. He's as important to her getting well as the healthcare team is. Next slide, please. There we go. So when we began our journey onto providing help, we decided to call it Caregiver Conversation, which was a nice way of saying this is like a meeting, because a lot of people might be offended by the term support. A lot of people feel such as, I'm good, I can handle this. So we decided to call it Caregiver Conversations. I reached out to our community we have this program called the Comprehensive Cancer Support Program. And I spoke to the social workers and folks from pastoral care, from our counselors, our psychologists and psychiatrists, to get them to jump on board and to facilitate these conversations. It was important to have this quality of facilitator because there have been a time or two where a patient has been, or a caregiver rather, has been very emotional. And it's good to have someone who knows what they're doing when they're doing this. So at first we scheduled it twice a week because we couldn't get a room. You know, we are limited with space in the cancer hospital. And then we got it to weekly. So every Tuesday at 2:00, we are meeting. And including during COVID, we are meeting via Zoom. And we continue, we don't have as many attending, but it's there and our patients and caregivers know it's there. We developed a caregiver volunteer program where our volunteers would go up and round on the inpatient, the infusion, the clinic areas, over in women's and in surgical oncology, as well as GYN oncology, and bring the caregivers to the meetings. Next slide, please. So we decided at first we would do a paper invitation, and we thought, oh, they're going to break it down our door. They're going to come, you know. Well, it didn't work that way. You got to go to them. And so with the rounding, we went to them. We also realized if we baked, they would come. And no, it wasn't coming from it wasn't coming from the hospital cafeteria. We were baking. And it made all the difference in the world. And then you always bake extra because they needed some to take back up to the floor with them. And we were more than happy to do it. And I will tell you, when I said we're serving dessert, they were on board. But once we got them there, they were truly engaged. Next slide, please. So we also realized the extra burdens for caregiving during COVID. Oh my goodness. It's the isolation. We're all isolated. We are so isolated. And you've got a caregiver who's isolated because they're afraid they don't want to leave their loved ones very often. And so you need to sort of put things in place that will pick up for the slack. So you can't get people over to watch, but you can take your phone with you and go for a walk around the block 1, 2, 3 times. Both of you need to do it. Both of you need to do it. Sorry, my husband just walked in. The other thing is managing your fear. If you are afraid or if you have concerns, you need to talk to that, to address those things with your healthcare team. And they can refer you to the appropriate people for you to share your burdens with. This is hard work that you're doing. And I want to encourage you to feel part of the team that's caring for the patient and as important as your provider that are in there. We're doing office visits differently now, as you can probably see. You know, we're doing it in Doximity and FaceTime, et cetera, and finding whether or not our patients are more forthcoming during these visits. And we're doing a study on that. You're flying by the seat of your pants and you're making healthcare decisions. And, you know, it's not always easy to get a hold of your healthcare team. And sometimes when you put in a request through MyChart, you may not get an answer as soon as you might want it. There's also the hesitancy of not wanting to burden or ask a question that you deem may be ridiculous. It's not. If you have this question, I can tell you other people have had it too. Next slide, please. So now we're moving, as we move ahead, we are trying to, and we've been very successful in getting our staff to recognize caregiver. It's not the nurse or the physician or the nurse practitioner or the fellow, or the caregiver is you. It's the lay person caring for the patient at home. And we're working very hard to get this recognized by the staff. We've all had incidents where we felt a little invisible, where we weren't given the opportunity to ask a question. And so as patients, I want you to advocate for your caregiver. And when you go in for a visit, you're going to say, I brought so-and-so with me today. This person is my best friend, my husband, my wife, my sister, my brother, my daughter. And this is the person that's going to advocate for me. So this person's going to be here at most of my visits. And this person is whom I'm going to rely on to reach out to you if I have a healthcare issue. So we're both going to advocate for each other. The patient's going to advocate for the caregiver, and the caregiver is obviously advocating for the patient. We want our staff, and we're teaching them slowly, especially when we teach to the fellows, about watching family dynamics. Are the caregivers interactive with the patient on the visits? Are there ways that we can pull them in? Yeah, there are ways. Who did you bring with you to the visit today? Do you have some questions? What is your role like? And you know, especially when you're dealing with an older person or an older patient, a mini evaluation of that caregiver is not a bad idea. Are they cognitively able to understand? Are they able to move? Are you worried about them falling? Do you need to have alternative resources just in case something might happen? Is there a sibling or a child that can also participate here? So these are all things that are really important. When you get discharged from the hospital, be sure that you understand everything that is given to you. And you're given a lot of stuff. Ask the questions. Make sure they sit down and talk to you. Make eyeball. And make sure they know something about you. Whether you make a fabulous chocolate cake, you're about to have a new grandchild, you are professor of medicine at, I'm not going to mention any names, but you know what I mean. There is something, make sure that your provider knows a little something about you. Just to sort of personalize here, my husband is a very good, sorry, this is not supposed to happen. Okay, we'll throw that under there, apologize. My husband is a very good oncologist. He's a very good oncologist, and he practices patient and family-centered care. He knows about his patients, but he was sort of blindsided because we share opposite offices here. When a new patient was meeting with him on Doximity, and he introduced himself and he said, we've got some slides to look at and wanted to go over your care plan. And she said, wait a minute, you don't know anything about me, but I've got something prepared and I want you to know about me. And so she told him in 2 minutes or less, you know, what she did, what her exercise program was like, that she cared for an older, for an older parent. And this was so important for this provider to know that this was a human being who was also a caregiver as well. So he's actually writing a grant on it, and I think I'm going to participate on it because I want our caregivers to participate in this kind of information. So next slide, please. So we were able to get a grant from the School of Public Health, and we had 5 absolutely astonishingly excellent students. And we put together a website just for caregivers. We update it once a year, and it's got every piece of information you could possibly think about being an oncology caregiver. It's absolutely terrific. I'm so proud of the work that we've done. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how we have changed things a little bit. One of our most lovely advisors had a significant diagnosis and needed to have a chest tube put in. And the surgeon was there, and he said to his wife, I'm going to show you how to do this. And his wife, Carol, said, well, I'm a little nervous. But she didn't say it to the physician, she said it to her husband. And he showed her how to do it. And he said, okay, now you're going to do it, to his wife. And she went home knowing fully well how to do this. To know the burden and the impact that a caregiver has, I've interviewed so many advisors. And I've seen men brought to their knees when they talk about the role that their wife played in the care as they're going through this journey. It has changed my life. So in closing, as we're broadening the program of telling people who the caregiver is, what they do, how important the role is, how you bring so much to the table in getting that patient, that you are, as I said in the beginning, as important to that team as your main provider. I want you to be proactive. I want you to say, hey, I'm her caregiver. I'm going home with her or him. Anything that you say to her, I need to hear. And if you are not feeling well, if you are finding this burdensome, and yes, it is a big job, reach out and get the help. Find out the support groups in your area. You can reach out to me and I will send you in that direction. But the role of the caregiver is absolutely huge for an oncology patient. And my hat's off to you because you do an extraordinary job, and I'm so grateful. Do I have another slide here? Let's see. So this is what the website has that we talked about. And as I said, take advantage of it. Next slide, please. And there's just a little, inkling of what's there. The other thing is, for caregivers, get some exercise. It's so good. Get outside, get the wiggles out. Shoot, we all need it right now, right? We all need it. And since you can't go in and do the yoga classes, there are amazing opportunities on YouTube, and they don't cost anything. They're absolutely fabulous. There's everything from CrossFit to weight training to yoga to Pilates to anything. So distraction is good, but my hat's off. You're wonderful people, and thank you for doing the wonderful job that you're doing. I think that's about it. Is it not, Colleen? Yeah.
I think so. Well, Loretta, thank you so much for sharing all the resources and the encouragement. I'm just so glad to hear you guys have so many resources for caregivers at UNC.
Thank you.
Well, great. Now we're going to move on to our last speaker, Lisa Hoskins, who is the Caregiver Support Coordinator at the Center for Volunteer Caregiving. So Lisa, I'm going to mute myself and share your slides and turn it over to you.
Thank you. As Colleen said, I'm Lisa Hoskins. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I have worked with caregivers for many years. So I'm very excited to be focusing on caregivers and resources for you all. Next slide. So to begin, caregivers, you are important too. Next slide. As a caregiver, it's vitally important to focus on your self-care and coping skills because there are serious consequences of neglecting stress. And as we know, caregiving is a very stressful job. So you could have health problems, a breakdown in relationships, depression or feeling burned out, or even a decreased quality of care for your loved one. Studies show that caregivers are more likely to have depression than the regular population. So it's definitely something that we need to keep an eye on. Next slide. So caregiver self-care is critical. If you take care of yourself, you will provide better care to your loved one. Really, to me, the first step is for the caregiver to acknowledge and make your health and needs a priority too, and to be intentional in caring for yourself. It's not selfish to care for yourself and to make sure that you are getting what you need as well. Not only ask for, but accept help when given. I know sometimes the tendency is to withdraw and isolate or to feel that you should be able to do this all on your own, but we all need help in life and there are no additional rewards for doing this alone. So if you can delegate certain tasks, do so. If people offer help, accept it. Ideally, self-care is best when it is built into your regular routine and you do so before you become overly stressed and burned out. Next slide. So oftentimes when dealing with health problems, we feel very out of control because there is so much that is not in our control. So focusing on what you can do and have control over is really important. So you can have a tremendous amount of self-compassion and grace for yourself as well as for others. This is being used increasingly in therapeutic settings because it is so important and beneficial to the individual. You can focus on how to focus your energy on the areas that you can change or improve and to let go of what you cannot change, such as a health diagnosis. At times, we spend a lot of our energy wishing that something were different from what it is. And I think the Serenity Prayer does a beautiful job of describing this, about granting me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think here that the key is the discernment piece of this, what we can and cannot do. Next slide. So briefly, I'm going to just talk about the Center for Volunteer Caregiving. Our mission is to engage the community in providing volunteer services to improve the lives of seniors, caregivers, and adults with disabilities. And this is so they can live in the community as independently for as long as possible. Next slide. So we have 3 programs. The program that I coordinate is the Caregiver Support Program. And this is for Wake County, unfortunately just Wake County, but we provide volunteers to go out into people's homes 2 to 3 hours a week to every other week to provide respite care so that the volunteer or the caregiver can have a break and a respite time. Another program that we do is we offer the Powerful Tools for Caregiving class 3 times a year, and it's a 6-week evidence-based class. It doesn't talk about hands-on caregiving as much as it talks about the emotional coping skills and the mental well-being of caregivers. We also go over how to communicate effectively, so it's a really helpful class. Our next one is starting in April, on Mondays at 2:30 to 4. And if you're interested in joining, please let me know. We also have a couple community offerings. We do yoga for caregivers specifically that we offer twice a month. And I also do a guided meditation once a week at 3 o'clock on Wednesdays that you can call into to just kind of get a reset for the week. Next slide. So we also have a medical transportation program, which is up to 1 ride per week with a week's notice. And then our third program is called In-Home Connections, and those are for the elderly who live alone and are more homebound. And we offer a friendly visiting and telecare program, grocery shopping and essential errands, paperwork assistance, and light housekeeping. And that program is our only means-tested program. Next slide. So identifying and reducing personal stress, we must make sure that our basic physiological needs are being met. So most importantly is sleep. Being sleep deprived affects our mental health and coping abilities significantly. So make getting better sleep a goal. That should be one of the #1 goals. Self-awareness is also an important skill in identifying several things. First, your emotions and when you start to feel them. So if you are starting to know when you're starting to get anxious or stressed or angry. And the more self-aware, the earlier we can pick up on what we are feeling and prevent it from escalating further. We have the opportunity to choose an appropriate coping skill at this point, and then we can determine what situation precipitated the emotion and triggered this response. So having all of this information is really valuable to know so that we can more skillfully manage difficult emotions and situations. And then another way to reduce stress is to break down tasks into small action steps so as not to get overwhelmed. And this also gives you a sense of accomplishment when you complete a step. Next slide. So tools for coping. As we know, one size does not fit all. And so I'm going to offer a variety of options so that you can choose what works best for you. So breathing is always the first option on my list because it's something that we always have access to. At any time, we can pause and take a deep breath, inhaling deeply through the nose, holding a moment, and then letting out a long exhale. This only takes a few minutes, and it significantly lowers our stress, blood pressure, and pulse rate. Gratitude, I think I heard Jenny talk about gratitude earlier. That's another important tool as it minimizes our negativity bias and has been found to positively rewire and create new neural pathways in the brain. So we're not talking about false optimism or positivity, but truly what is good in our lives and going well. So saying a few things that you're grateful for in the morning and or before you go to bed has been found to increase overall well-being. Perspective. So our perspective is unique to us and runs through our personal filter. So our perspectives are not really fixed. It can be helpful when in a difficult situation to pause again and take a step back. And this allows us to approach what is happening with more objectivity. So an exercise is to describe what is happening in a fact-based manner with no judgmental labels. So by asking what judgments or assumptions we are making provides us the opportunity to adjust the way we see or are approaching a situation, and then giving us the option of reframing it and looking at it differently. Next slide. So mindfulness, we hear a lot about mindfulness these days, and it's helpful in several ways. First is when we are focused on the present moment, and we put our full attention into that, so we're not multitasking. And when we're focused in the present moment, we're not regretting the past or worrying about the future. We're meeting that moment without judging it and without trying to change it. And so that can be very liberating. And the second aspect is on our focused attention on one thing. So we hear a lot about adult coloring now. We're working jigsaw puzzles. This intense focus on an activity can provide a mental break, which can be renewing and rejuvenating in a relatively short period of time. Meditation and prayer is helpful as it centers and grounds us and can help settle our mind from spinning. Our mind will still have thoughts. We never can shut down the thoughts completely, but they're often fewer and less chaotic. And this stillness can be calming, and it can also increase our clarity and our intuition. Lastly, on this slide, we're going to talk about positive self-talk. So we're going to use the self-awareness we discussed earlier to listen to what we are saying to ourselves. So is your self-talk harsh? If so, what if you were gentler with yourself? Create a positive statement you could say to yourself when your inner critic is coming out. And I heard that Jenny, she also had sort of a positive statement that she would say. So for instance, something might be, I am not perfect and I'm doing the best I can today. Or whatever it is that would make you feel when you can tell that you're being very negative or feeling down, that you can say to yourself, that's more positive. Next slide. So of course, seeking out emotional support and socialization, we as humans yearn for connection. So of course, being with family and friends, consider a counselor or therapist, because it is helpful to have someone that's objective and can provide some additional therapeutic support, and or attending support groups. And of course, currently there are many options, as most of these supportive services can be accessed from home virtually. Movement, we mentioned that earlier. So spend each day moving your body. It can be a short walk, it can be some stretches. And then if you're able to do more like yoga or cardiovascular, that's great, because it will help to relieve that anxious energy and it will make you feel better. Green space. Studies have shown that green space, the calming and healing effects of being in nature. So being in the woods, listening to the birds, feeling the grass on your feet. Taking a break to go outside is a great option, and it also promotes getting your vitamin D. Next, oh no, not next slide. Laughter. So laughter, as we know, is therapeutic. So are there people in your life who make you laugh? Can you watch a comedy or listen to a funny podcast? How can you find some humor in your day? Laughter lightens the mood and it brings a sense of levity to a situation. Expression. So participate in an activity that allows you to express yourself. Journaling is a great activity because it's also helpful in processing and voicing feelings and emotions. Or what other ways that you creatively express yourself. Animals. Being around animals has a positive psychological effect and can rapidly calm and soothe us. So there are many therapeutic benefits of petting an animal or hugging an animal. It releases the endorphin oxytocin. And the more oxytocin we have also reduces cortisol, which is the major hormone that causes stress in our bodies. And we want to limit that because that's very harmful to us. So by petting an animal, it's helping to reduce our cortisol. If you don't have an animal, find a friend that does, or you could go to a cat cafe or go to your local shelter. Next slide. And of course, the last couple slides are just online caregiving resources, as we were discussing that earlier as well. There's lots of family caregiver websites that talks about elder care locator, AARP family caregiving. There's one that's specifically for daughters that are caregiving. There's lots of caregiver podcasts available, and there's an app for anything you could possibly imagine, as you know. Todoist is one that is a list app. Camcard was one I found recently that you can scan business cards and it puts it in your phone. And I thought this was helpful when you get all those medical professionals cards. It's hard to know what to do with them. Jure is a mental health app that has journaling and cognitive behavioral therapy. And then Microsoft OneNote is a great thing that's on your computer that you can access usually from your computer or your phone. So that's always a good option if you want to sort of get more organized. Next slide. And then a lot of online mindfulness and meditation resources. So there's a couple also additional yoga resources here. You call this Yoga's Nonprofit, and it offers classes for people that are affected by cancer. And then Yoga Cheryl also has a free yoga class for cancer. John Kabat-Zinn is one of my favorites. He's on YouTube, and he was the creator of Mindfulness Meditation. A good website is Tara Brock's website that offers a lot of guided meditations and calming. She's very calming to listen to, so I love listening to her speak. Podcasts are one that I like a lot is Sharon Salzberg, Meta Hour, and she is an expert on loving kindness meditation. And then, of course, there's lots more apps in terms of meditation. So Insight Timer is one of the best. It's got a huge free library that you can access. And then additionally, there's some new programming I've noticed that's on Netflix. It's called Headspace, Guide to Meditation. It explains how to meditate. And there's also an app by the same name. And HBO Max also has a new show called A World of Calm that's supposed to help sort of soothe you. It's got like underwater footage and different types of footage. And it's also connected with an app on your phone called Calm. And then last slide. And then I'm going to actually be doing a longer caregiver presentation next week. So I just included that information if anybody is interested in joining that. It's through Resources for Seniors that's in Wake County. So that's all I have to share for now.
Great. Well, Lisa, thank you so much. And there in both your slides and Loretta's slides, there are some really important resources there. So I will be sure to share those slides with all of our attendees later this week. So thanks for sharing. And I think it's really empowering to think about how much is in the caregiver's control in terms of how they cope and manage with all of the stress related to caregiving. So I thank you for sharing that. I hope everyone felt that way as well. Well, I know we're a couple minutes after 5. I see we have a couple questions here. So I have this one question that I would like to throw out for you guys to discuss before we close quickly. One of our participants asked, how hard is it to be open with your feelings when you read or hear of someone who has passed from cancer? So I guess Jenny and Johnny, this one is probably for you, or Lisa and Loretta, if you've been touched by cancer in any way, I would definitely welcome your thoughts on that as well.
I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry. Let me look at the chat too.
Yeah, so basically processing, your feelings when you hear of someone passing from cancer with such a personal experience and relationship with it.
Well, both Jenny's parents died of lung cancer, and my father and mother died, one from diabetes and the other from liver cancer. My take on that question is that we really hate to lose people that we love, but in our instances, they suffered so much. It was just really, really hard to cope with, and that me personally, and I'm sure Jenny feels the same way, we knew that they would be in a better place if they were to pass. It's difficult, but I've always tried to relate to memories, the times that I had with various friends. I just lost a good friend on Saturday who I spent a lot of time with, and just a wonderful guy. And I really try to think of the positive times that we had together. So that's my way of coping. I
think as a survivor, it's very hard, especially when you have developed a relationship like some of us have with the people on the luncheons. And I know you guys are dealing with it daily, but sometimes I feel like, why am I still here? When I hear of a good friend that passed away with cancer, or somebody that is younger than me. I mean, those are the ones that really get to me, because I've lived a full life. I'm good with things if it happens tomorrow, but younger people and things like that, I start questioning a little bit sometimes, why me? But then I get back to that other side of, there's a plan for me. There's a positivity in that of why I'm here. But it's hard. I mean, it's hard for me to, like when I go to doctor's appointments, I'm a chatty person, so I usually will find somebody to talk to. But when I go to those appointments, I don't. I sort of sit to myself because I can't handle listening to too many other stories, especially if they're not good. It can put me in a bad place that I don't like to go. So sometimes I feel like I'm a little hard when that comes and being a little selfish. But I think as a caregiver or a survivor, you've got to do what works for you and to be honest with your feelings too. I mean, that's the other thing, is to be able to tell that other person how you feel and why you feel the way that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Loretta or Lisa, is there anything you guys would like to add?
Well, you know, we can work in it all day. But when cancer comes home, it's a horse of a different color. And you're right, you never know how strong you have to be or you can be. You learn to recognize things in yourself that you didn't see before. And sometimes a cancer diagnosis, it just plain sucks. My brother died at the age of 47 from a brain tumor, and he was an oncologist. And you're right, the young ones, who would have thought? So it doesn't get easier. But then I don't think it should. Because it's the person, it's the human side that we need to keep, so that we keep doing our jobs in a way that helps the patients and caregivers who come through our doors.
Absolutely. Thank you, Loretta. Well, I think that's all that we have for our program today. And I just really, again, want to thank each of you for sharing all of your information and experiences. Paige, do you have anything else that you would like to say in closing?
No, I put it in the chat, but I think all three of you complimented each other so well too, and what you shared, and what just hearing your personal story, Jenny and Johnny, and then Loretta and Lisa, your resources and practical tools, just, it was excellent. And I do, Colleen, I'm excited we're going to share some of the resources after the fact, because I think there's a lot of things that all of us could use. So thank you again. We just really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, yes, I will reach out to everyone and share these slides. I'll share a link to this recording and also a follow-up survey to get your feedback on the event. So thanks for being here today. Thank you to all of our wonderful speakers, and everyone enjoy the rest of your evening.